Hello, welcome to our conversation for tonight, Musical Metamorphosis with Jonatha Brooke and Jeremy Cohen. My name's Julia. I'm here to welcome you. We are not going to see or hear any of you. This is just streaming out. But if you're interested in asking any questions, you can do so in the comments on Facebook, if that's where you're watching, or by emailing questions@pwcenter.org. We're going to be starting in about 6 minutes. So there's still time to grab a glass of water or take a little break before we get started. And hi again, everybody who's joining us online. It's so good to see you, though I can't see you, of course. My name's Julia. I'm here to help get you all situated before we start in about 4 minutes. We're not going to see or hear you, so don't worry about your camera or your mic or anything like that. We are just streaming out to you. But if you have any questions or you want to get involved in the conversation, you can do that through the comments on Facebook if that's where you're viewing this on either the Playwrights Center or HowlRound's Facebook page. Or if you'd like to email, the email is questions@pwcenter.org. And hello again, everyone. I see our little watching numbers are slowly climbing. We're so glad to have you all here for this conversation. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. If you're tuning in either on the Playwright Center page, the HowlRound page, or on Facebook, you can just sit back and watch. We're not going to see or hear you, so you don't have to worry about your video or your mic or anything like that. But we will have a Q&A section, and so if you want to get involved in the conversation, you can feel free to leave questions in the comments, underneath or to the side of that Facebook video box. Or if you'd like to, we also have an email address, which is questions@pwcenter.org. And we'll be looking at all of those places to get your questions. And hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching on the Playwrights Center page, the HowlRound page, or on either Facebook page, my name's Julia. I'm so glad to welcome you to this conversation. We're going to kick off in just a minute here, but I just want to let you know we're not going to see or hear any of you, so don't worry about your camera or your mic or anything like that. We'll just be streaming out to you. But if you do have questions for the Q&A section a little bit later on, feel free to drop those in the comment section, either on the bottom or to the side of the video on Facebook, or you can email us at questions@pwcenter.org. And if you have any questions or issues with the stream, you can also email those to me as well. And in just a minute, we'll see Jeremy Cohen and then kick it off.
Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. It is so great to be with you all tonight. If only we were in person in space, especially for an evening as special as this. Welcome to the Playwrights Center. My name is Jeremy Cohen. I'm the producing artistic director here at the center. I use he, him pronouns. And on behalf of our board and our staff and the over 2,200 playwrights that we serve each and every year at the Playwrights Center, I am so pleased to welcome you to the fourth and final conversation of our summer conversation series, Musical Metamorphosis, which will be an intimate conversation tonight with award-winning singer-songwriter Jonatha Brooke, who will talk about moving from the world of making musical theater, including performances of some of those songs. So kind of shifting from being a singer-songwriter in the rock world and how she's made this move into theater, which is going to be a really exciting conversation. We have folks tuning in online from all over the globe to be with us tonight, and I just want to send all of you so much love and good energy and good health right now from here in the Twin Cities, from myself and from Jonatha and everyone at the Playwrights Center. In the middle of this moment, God, tonight, justice, activism, art making, and transformation, we are gathering together this summer to hear from an extraordinary set of artists. Here at the Playwrights Center, we deeply value the centering of artist leadership and artist voices and how we approach all of our work. And today's conversation is no exception, with a brilliant, brilliant talent like Jonatha. I invite you, if you're interested, to check out any of the other conversations, to go onto our website, pwcenter.org, and you can see recordings of the previous three. Tonight's panel and this four-part series is co-produced with the amazing, amazing HowlRound Theater Commons. Thanks to Thea and everyone at HowlRound for being such great partners this summer. And it's being live streamed on HowlRound TV. I also want to send a very special thanks to our incredible supporting sponsor for this whole series this summer, Knock Inc., whose underwriting has helped bring tonight's conversation to you free of charge and ensuring that all of the artists are being paid for their time and work. So for 50 years, or nearly 50 years, the Playwrights Center has worked to provide a platform for a wide diversity of voices and to create deeply accessible programming by making all of our public events like this one free. So if tonight's conversation inspires you, we do hope that you will consider us in helping make our mission complete and consider making a tax-deductible donation. Gifts, of course, of any size make a huge impact to help support artists and art making going forward in this critical moment. Visit pwcenter.org/donate. And if you're interested in participating in additional musical theater writing workshops and programs later this season, please check out our website. Keep an eye out for classes and events pages for future opportunities, as we will be doing more around the making of new musical theater work coming up this season. Finally, about our season, we are getting very close to announcing our 2020-2021 public season, all of which will be made accessible and available to you online and free. So please do check back in the next couple of weeks. We're really excited to share with you the amazing artists we'll be supporting in their development this coming season. I did want to mention, because we spent so much time and energy on it this summer, in partnership with the amazing Twin Cities company True Roots, we have helped support the creation of the incredible A Moment of Silence, which is a living historical archive and celebration of Blackness launched through the commissioning of over 55 Black Minnesotan artists in this moment of transformation that obviously, with the events in the last 24 hours, continues. The extraordinary Shay Cage has been the leader and curator and artistic head of this project, and you can check out the anthology online now at blackmnvoices.com. Again, that's blackmnvoices.com. And that has a rotation of different pieces from these 55 artists. So we hope you'll keep going back to visit this incredible site and effort. Tonight's discussion with Jonatha will be approximately 90 minutes long. There will be a Q&A section in the last third of the conversation. So as Julia mentioned earlier, please feel free to send your questions in throughout the conversation, and then we'll take some time to hear your thoughts and answer your questions as well. You can email us at questions@pwcenter.org, or if you're viewing this live stream or on Facebook or any other medium, please post your questions in the comment section there. Again, the email link for that is questions@pwcenter.org. All right, let us get into the meat of the conversation. To do so, please help me welcome to the screen one of my greatest friends and longtime collaborators, the amazing Jonatha Brooke. Jonatha, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. How's it going?
I made it. It's going pretty well. I can't complain.
Where are you coming to us live from tonight, my friend?
Well, my kitchen is there. So my kitchen, really, but this is the dining room. But I'm in the Mini. I'm in the Minneapolis.
Sweet. How's it going into Minneapolis, where you live now?
You know, I haven't been outside today. I hear it's pretty swampy, but it's going okay. It's
a little swampy.
It's been intense, as it has for everybody. We're all reinventing ourselves, especially touring musicians.
Which I'm excited to hear more about tonight. I really want to get into how, I think so much of what we've been talking about is how artists are kind of reinventing themselves, and to share about this amazing kitchen concert series that you've been doing for all the weeks now, and to hear a little bit more about that, and also some of the other work that you're doing to help keep artists connected and keep yourself connected and moving forward.
Thanks.
I'm gonna say your bio. I know this makes you blush, but I'm gonna do it
Oh,
anyway.
no.
I
Okay.
know, but I love you. It's okay.
I love you too. Thank you.
Jonatha Brooke, our special guest tonight, has been writing songs, making records, and touring since the early 90s. After 4 major label releases, she started her own independent label, the incredible Bad Dog Records, in 1999. And I just want to shout out the amazing Pat Rains, who we love so much, a great partner in crime, and Jonatha's released 9 more albums with Bad Dog, including the companion CD to her critically acclaimed one-woman off-Broadway musical, My Mother Has 4 Noses, that we'll hear a little bit from and about tonight. Jonatha's co-written songs with Katy Perry and the Courtyard Hounds, among many others. She's written for 4 Disney films, numerous TV shows, and has composed and performed the theme song for Joss Whedon's Dollhouse, which is awesome. I love that. Since COVID-19 halted all touring plans, Jonatha's been performing live stream concerts from right there where you're seeing her tonight in her home on Facebook and Instagram, called the Kitchen COVID Concerts, Mondays at 2 p.m. Central. And I'm going to mention that a few more times because I, in addition to being a friend and a collaborator, I'm also a huge fan and a neighbor. I still vow I'm going to come peek in the windows and hear the concert live sometime. But these concerts are incredible, and they've been just amazing and very transparent and beautiful artists sharing moments, not just the songs themselves, but the stories behind the songs and the stories behind this amazing artist who we'll spend some time with tonight. Jonatha's also been teaching online masterclasses. So if tonight is interesting for you and you want to check this out, please do. She's just about to release some new masterclass slots in songwriting and is working on 3 musical theater projects, including Quadroon, which we'll hear about tonight with the late legendary jazz pianist and composer Joe Sample, Switched with playwright Geoffrey Nauffts, and Tempest with Jaclyn Backhaus. Jonatha was a recipient of the McKnight Artist Fellowship Grant in 2018 and won the 2019 International Acoustic Music Award for Best Female Artist for her song, Put the Gun Down. This year, she was awarded an Independent Music Award for her EP, Imposter, and her 14th record. If you have not gotten this record, the Sweetwater Sessions was released on July 10th. It's just been out, as you know, for about a little over a month, and it's incredible. And we hope that you will check it out too. I listen to it constantly at work because I can do that. And for those of you at home, we had actually originally slated this conversation between Joe and I as part of our newly launched spring season of conversation and new work at the Playwrights Center in response to the many pandemics and global crises that have affected so many vulnerable communities right now. And at the Playwrights Center, we were really determined to create a series of jobs for suddenly employed playwrights and other artists. And this conversation was meant to bring that public conversation to a close when, of course, the public murder of George Floyd happened just 8 blocks from where I'm coming to you tonight. And as we all continue to reckon, especially now in the last 24 hours, with how best to make the necessary substantive changes in systems and communities in our world, which is something that Jonatha talks so frequently about and thinks about in her art making and music. It feels critical to have artists like Joe and so many others at the center of the conversations about how we move this world forward. And I couldn't be more thrilled and grateful to have my great friend with us tonight. So welcome. 1,000 people cheering for you. I'm doing the work of cheering for 1,000 people.
Thank you, Jeremy.
So tonight, we're going to share your incredible array of work and talk a little bit about how you moved from one form to another. That's really the focus of the conversation. And we're going to hang out. You're going to basically hear what it sounds like when Joe and I hang out and talk about making some theater and some songs together, which we have a tendency to do. So let's talk a little bit.
There's food involved, but we won't. That would be messy.
I know, but Pat, I'm just saying dinner. I'm just saying we're going to be very hungry after this. Let's start by talking a little bit about your career for the first 20 plus years. And then maybe if you can just share a little bit with us about how the world of theater entered that picture.
Okay. So the first 20, you want me to sort of give you like the elevator recap?
Yeah, sure.
The first 20 years, let's see. I went from being a dancer to actually writing songs, and that happened basically in college in a composition course where I think I might have been struck by lightning. I took this composition course, and the first assignment was to take a poem and set it to music, and that became my first song. It was an E. Cummings poem called Love is More Thicker Than Forget, and it's on my first album. So that was sort of this beginning of like, wait a minute, I can do this thing that I love about other people, but I can make it weirder, more dissonant. I can add a million harmonies. I can have 2 lyrics going at once. I can have my friend Jennifer sing like crazy, crazy parts, and we can probably make a living at this. And that was the beginning. And so Jennifer and I had this band called The Story, and we made 2 records on Elektra Records. And from there, we sort of parted ways in 94. I had 2 more major label records, which were awesome and fun, and they were sort of part of finding my solo voice and my power as a producer and a singer-songwriter, but a musician and a producer. And from there, it just kept sort of snowballing through making more records. I started my own independent label in 99. So the rest of my career has been as an indie and sort of threading those needles and treading those waters to sort of figure out how do you do it with like no deep pockets and no tour support and no one sort of buying you videos. And it's been an amazing journey. And mostly my biggest quest has been not to repeat myself. And I think that's part of how I opened up and embraced and transitioned into this very new way of writing, which is writing for theater. And the very first thing that I did for theater was writing a song with Joe Sample. And he'd had this music for years that had been haunting him, and this story that had been haunting him. Joe Sample, for those of you who don't know, is just an iconic jazz pianist, composer. He passed away in 2014, but he and I started working on this thing, I don't know how many years before that. We managed to get a reading done before he passed away, but we wrote 20 songs together. The first one was just this gorgeous, almost aria. And it was the first glimpse into like, wait a minute, okay, there's a different way of storytelling. And I think I can do this. And I think I know what this song needs. I know what these notes, the greatest and worst thing about songwriting is that there's so much economy to it. You only have so many syllables for your story. And so you have to just use them so wisely. And that was what was exciting about working with Joe, because his piece was finished. It was orchestral and gorgeous. And I got to find the right syllables to fit into this very perfect 100-proof distillation of, it's called Prayer. And that was super exciting. And that was the opening of the door. And then from then it sort of seemed like, there's this other world that I hadn't thought of. You know, I certainly was obsessed with the sound of music as a kid. I was obsessed with West Side Story and Godspell, and I know every word, but it hadn't occurred to me to tell stories in that way.
And I'm curious about dance. Like, did the dance and theater world ever collide for you, or because you were such a trained dancer that it really kind of stayed solo for that?
It stayed really separate, except that I think that I compose and I feel music almost like a dancer. And there's no way to separate that out from my approach. Like I'm a trained dancer. I'm not a trained musician. So I approach like learning music kinetically. I don't really know. I couldn't tell you, oh, well, that's a G flat 9 going to an F sharp, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't really tell you that. I could just say it feels like this under my fingers. And that's how I've approached composing as well. Just I see voices as almost choreography. And I think that's why my melodies are sometimes really crazy. You know, I will leap from low to high as if I were, you know, a circus performer. And I think it's because I can envision the choreography of like what each voice will be doing and how they can cross and then meet together here on the high bar maybe, and then take off in separate directions. And then again, with this sort of entry into theater, the idea of like two lyrics like facing off. And I didn't realize I was doing this with the story. I was doing this with Jennifer in So Much Mine. There's two lyrics and two melodies, and there's this great counterpoint, and there are these moments where they meet and they hold together in these beautiful harmonies, and then there are these dissonances. And it's interesting. It's like once I got into writing My Mother Has Four Noses, you're one of the people that said, like, well, we've been waiting for you. Like, where have you been all these years? Like, everybody in theater who knows who you are is like, well, of course she should be writing for theater. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me?
So now you know 16 projects later. Can you just talk, can you tell folks a little bit about My Mother Has Four Noses? And one thing that I would just say to kind of to relate to what you were saying earlier that we talk a lot about in the theater field, especially right now, is this kind of resiliency about how there's so many artists, I think, like you, and also, you know, in the different parts of the art sector, who have been carving their own path. They've been doing this work. They've been not waiting for mainstream folks to say yes and do the thing and fund the thing. And partially that has to do with a lack of equity. You certainly have talked about it very publicly in terms of what it means to be a woman in the music field and now in theater. And I'm curious about what that path was then for what is My Mother Has Four Noses? How did it come about? And how did it marry song and story?
My Mother Has Four Noses was this very strange idea that I had in the middle of caring for my mother. And I took care of her for the last 2 years of her life. She had dementia. She was also a character. And our daily sort of theater turned into an incredible story that I started to believe that there was no other way to tell this story but theater. And I didn't even know what that meant because I was just Joe, singer-songwriter. But even my mother would come up with these grand pronouncements. She'd just be like, well, you might be refrigerated for other expectations. And we would just be like, what? That's just crazy, Mom, but that's really great. Let me write it down. And she'd be like, Julie, that's my nickname. Are you getting this down? Because we should make a play out of it. Now, get writing and we'll take it to Broadway and we'll make a lot of money. And I would just be like, this is just so crazy, Mom. I don't really know. Okay, I'm writing it down. I will. And little by little over this 2-year period, songs sort of filtered out. And I was writing down all of these crazy stories that were happening to us. And I had this opportunity to be in a new play festival in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. My friend Tracy Brigden, I would call her and I would say, I got another one for you, Tracy. And she'd just be like, go ahead, what? I'd be like, you won't believe like this whole poop thing. Like there's this whole thing around poop. Like you have to manage poop when you're caring for someone. And she's like, write it down. So I didn't even know what I was doing. I was writing songs and then stories and then slowly it sort of seemed like, well, they need to weave together somehow. There needs to be a through line. It doesn't need to be chronological. And I need to figure out how to do this. And I will do this because I have a deadline now. So Mom died January 31st. And Tracy put me in this Momentum Play Festival June 1st of that year. So I basically had February, March, April. I had 4 months to make a play. And so I did. And it was incredible. What a great process. And I was just kind of making shit up and learning as I went and grieving as I went. It was definitely part of that process of understanding what had just happened to me too, like this very intense 2-year period. And that became My Mother Has Four Noses.
I'm curious maybe to share a little bit of, and we'll talk about it. Maybe we'll play first and then we'll talk about it after just for a second about sort of the chicken or egg question. Like, did the songs come first? Did the text come first? Which pieces went where? And so I'm wondering if you could play some of a song that kind of really sprung out of that moment and a little bit about how the active theater affected that song.
Changed it, yeah.
Yeah.
I could do that.
Okay, great.
I just happen to have my guitar here.
How handy. That's just incredible. There in your kitchen.
In my kitchen. So this is one of the first songs that I wrote. And it was before I even moved Mom in. But it was
into your house.
Yeah, but it was as I was realizing, like, this isn't just wacky Mom anymore. This is something really serious. Like, she's demented. Like, this is someone got to take over here. So I wrote this song called The Wind. And again, this is before I realized what it was going to be. So I wrote a whole song. I'm going to sing you a verse and a chorus, and then I'll tell you what happened next.
All right.
Take the path down to the shore, but no one lives there anymore. Your house is shuttered, cupboards bare, paper scattered everywhere. The labyrinth of all your fears, the twisted thought that brought you here. You ring it out year after year, with more faith, Lord, and lakes of right through you. You're hollow as a shell, but you still can't hear the sea. Hey, hey, the wind just blows right through you. So I will hold your best intentions. Down here on my knees, I'm praying, please. Just give me more faith, Lord, and shelter from that breeze. So in the play, it suspends here. On the record, it goes into the second verse and the second chorus. But in the play, and this is what the most exciting part of theater was for me, you can stop it like that. You can just go like, oh, sorry, and you'd be like, something's happening here I need to tell you about. And I need to tell you this way. I need to tell you about my history with my mother. Yes, I know she's demented, but I need you to know this timeline. We are so molecularly connected, but there's all of this baggage, and we love each other, but it's wicked hard. And I need to tell you, like, in 1990 this happened, in 1994 this happened, and then this happened, but dementia is coming. What am I doing? How am I going to deal with this? So the dialogue sort of gets it a little bit into that about our history, and then I'm telling you about that, like, I'm the daughter that was pissed. I'm the daughter that wrote some songs because my mother gave me all this great material over the years. But then I'm telling you, but I did love her, and I could see she was falling apart, and she really needed me. And I would call her because of that. I would call her more often, and she would soften, and she would say things like, oh, I'm so glad you called. I don't know what's going on. And she would tell me the same 4 stories that she'd told me 50 times before, but she'd keep them on a list by the phone. And so I thought, okay, I can say that, and then I can go back into the song. That will be so exciting, because the bridge is about her nattering on and on and on. So what I did in the show was I would call her da-da-da, and then she would natter on and on, on and on. You're not fooling anyone. You're not fooling anyone. But somehow you'll still get the joke. Ever bent, but you are never broke. Somehow I still love you, and I know you'll leave me laughing when you go. 'Cause the wind just blows right through you. So I'll collect the shells so I can hear the sea. Hey, hey, yeah, the wind just blows right through you. And I will hold your best intentions. Down here on my knees, I'm praying, please. Just give me more faith, Lord, and shelter from that breeze.
Clap, 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 clap.
I hope that made sense.
Totally. Yeah,
Big
it's
ol'
interesting.
run-on. Yeah.
I'm remembering too, as you're talking about it. So this is for folks at home. This is a show that I directed of Jonatha's, and what I remember is being in tech rehearsals in particular, and talking about this particular thing and thinking like, oh, the tension of the composition of the song, how the music is doing, as you were talking about playing in dynamics with what the text is doing or what the lyric is doing just before it, felt so like the thing that we always try to create, with designers and everyone there, which is like, how do you have that tension of the moment where it's heightened there? and then kind of use that vocabulary in the next chapter of the storytelling. And I think the wind does that so kind of beautifully there. And in my head, of course, I'm doing, I know that the light cues are like, as you're doing it, I'm like, go on. Yep, that's an 8 count. Yeah, go ahead. I miss theater so much. I've willed my light cues onto you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you. That was gorgeous. That was gorgeous. I want to talk also just a little bit about, because as the play goes on further, and as our lead, our Jonatha lead kind of gets further into the story and her own sense of perception starts to shift, she starts to ask these really big questions of kind of some of the early questions that the wind poses, but like in a much more progressed place emotionally and psychologically, and also like, who am I outside of this really intensely vacuum sealed moment of my life? And how does that relate to the context of the story in terms of the family I was born into and how that all moved forward? And then also like, how do I think about sacrifice? Do I talk about sacrifice? I remember a number of conversations about like, is it more powerful for me to talk about sacrifice or for the lyric to do the work or the music to do the work? What's the most kind of what lands that really crunchy moment?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can share a little bit about that in that second act.
Yeah, that was a real interesting excursion because I am a songwriter that doesn't like to hit you over the head with the story necessarily. I like to overestimate you and figure out that, you know, that you're going to fill in the spaces and or whatever story you bring to what I'm singing to you. And I think that was my instinct for this piece as well. Yes, in the speaking parts, I'm telling you some literal things, and I'm telling you a lot about my mother, things that I have never, ever said before in public. Like, it was terrifying to put this out there. So there's that element of it, too. But there was also we had many conversations, Jeremy and I, about how am I going to convey what's happening to me, Jonatha, the character telling you this story? And for me, that was where the songs did that job. And I wanted the songs to be the one place where there was that sacred part of the job, was to convey my struggle, my fears, my anger, my, you know, like all the ambiguity about caregiving and that fraught mother-daughter thing that so many of us have. I wanted to lodge those things in the songs and then have the storytelling outside of the songs be a little more straightforward. And
it's interesting because also when you wrote it, as you just shared with us a moment ago, it was so close to being in the middle of it and so close to the end, and how that then continued, even though even our work on it over years, we would sort of watch it, we'd run the show again, and we'd sort of say we were in a different city in a different part of the country or something doing it, and I'd be like, wow, it's interesting, your relationship and the character's relationship to the storytelling, now it's really leaning into the lyric, or now it's really leaning into the composition, or now it's really leaning into the text, because you have a little bit more distance from it, from the saturation of it. Yeah, and I'm curious now in this moment with so much, you talk so much about the justice work and the important work of our country right now in making this transformation. And I think about these sacrifices, and I think about how far we go, and it brings me right back to kind of to this moment in the piece as well. Do you want to share just a little bit maybe about that sacrifice and a little bit about that moment in song?
the how far you would go.
Yeah, for example.
For example. Yeah, I think it's universal, that call to action, as we're calling it these days. It's universal. There's such desperate need, and especially witnessing it now, where so many people are dying alone, and it's just devastating. I can't even imagine going through this now, and my heart just breaks like every time I witness more of that. But with this particular story, it was really clear that I was going to answer the call, that she's my mother. It was actually my husband who said, like, she's your mother. We're doing this. We are doing this. So it was just kind of, we made it up as we went along. We figured shit out and made it happen. And it's a call that you don't turn down. And of course you're terrified most of the time. And there were times when I thought I would die first. But then there are these amazing, amazing moments of great, deep love, and the story just thickens and deepens, and you can't not tell it. And it felt sort of imperative. I didn't really know what I was doing when I set out to write this thing, but it just felt like, you must do this. You must do this, and this will be important and to you, and it will certainly be, you won't be repeating yourself. So
You want to share a little bit?
yeah, there's a song called How Far You'd Go for Love. It happens in the second act, and actually, my mother was also a poet. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but I share a couple of her poems during the play, and this song follows not too long after I share the second poem, which is called My Dreams Do Not Despair, which is like typical mom. It's very dramatic, like, my dreams do not despair. And the last line of the poem is, old women don't want more books to read, just a hand to hold that holds right back, assuring memories are real. But when you get to that, like, memories are real point, it's not really dramatic mom anymore. It's like this poignant, like, oh my God, that's all we have. And she's lost hers, and she doesn't know what she's talking about anymore, but she's reacting to this visceral thing. It's like, memories are real, and holding hands. And holding hands was one of the only things that was comfort to her toward the end. And I think that's common for many dementia patients. Like, there's the other stuff goes away. Music sometimes remains, but there's touch, there's smell, and there's just this very simple, the simple things are what matter at that point. So anyway, she starts misremembering her poem and, like, ballasting around the room, like, complaining about how old she's gotten and how old women don't want more books to read. They just want someone to hold their hand while they're dying. And, you get to that point, and it's like a gut punch of, like, oh my God, it's true, she's dying. And how do I talk about that? Okay, I guess I better write a song. And it's called How Far You Go for Love. I'll this one gets chopped off in the middle too, so I'll chop it off in the middle so you can see what happened to it. Let's start again. No one knows how far you've fallen underneath the spell. You're all alone, and no one's calling, but it's just as well. You will never tell how far you'd go for love. You never know how far you'd go for love until you go far beyond what you have ever known of love for love. I was terrified most of the time. That's what happens next. I realize I'm singing this thing, and I'm like, I was terrified most of the time. I thought I would die first. My brothers weren't helping. I was very, very, very alone. And I had the care of this incredible human being solo. I had to make all the decisions. And so I tell that, and I get to the point where I am cataloging the stuff that's hard, but then I get to the point of, but oh my God, there were such amazing gifts. And this current that ran between us never stopped humming. And she would sometimes look at me and she would be lucid and she would say, "You are getting more and more beautiful. Booley, you saved me. I never could have done this without you." And of course, my heart would break and dissolve. And then, of course, I had to finish the song. There her hands, and here her fingers, holding fast for now. You'd like to go, but still you linger, 'cause you don't know how you would live without her. How far you'd go for love, you never know how far you'd go for love until you go far beyond what you have ever known, far beyond what you have ever known, far beyond what you have ever known of love, for love.
Stunning, beautiful.
It's weird.
Thank
I mean,
you.
it was so much fun to like think of songs in this different way.
Yeah.
As these little
And
parcels that could be broadened and amplified by chopping them.
yeah, I want to, as you're switching out, I want to move to Switched, because wow, what a totally different thing to go from something that is so deeply autobiographical and personal, and finding text, lyric, and composition together, and then moving to this amazing collaboration with Geoffrey Nauffts on this new musical. If you could just tell us a little bit about it, and then maybe like, so when you made that move, like what are things that, or like what's something that you learned in that process about moving to a more legit musical, and what's something you think you brought to the table?
Well, I wouldn't call it legit necessarily. I think what I brought to the table was a healthy dose of ignorance. You know what I mean? About like,
Yeah.
I didn't. It's funny because as I've learned more about like the rules about musical theater, like there are all these slots that you're supposed to fill, the I want slot, and then the I can't remember. See, and then there's the thing that happens before you break for intermission if you have two acts, and there has to be this precipice that you're about to fall off of. That like, oh no, what will happen? So that song has to solve this problem of like, keep them like, what will happen? And then there's the 11 o'clock number that has to just like, you have to pee your pants because it's like, so it wrecks your heart or it like brings the rafters down. And so I guess I just tried to ignore all that and kind of just write the songs that felt apropos and that to me distilled, again, it's like, bootlegging, distilled it down to this 100 proof of like an idea or a feeling. And I think what I've learned is a little bit of like, okay, yes, and I've definitely learned that phrase from the theater. From you, I think, but I've also learned that it's okay to move the plot along in the song. It's okay to not be like so elliptical. Like you can actually hear what the character's thinking and doing, and it's okay. And there's a way to do it that is satisfying to me, where I didn't think there would be. And so I've really had to work at and learn that particular skill.
How has it been lyrically for you in terms of going?
Part.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. If you can talk about that.
That's the hardest part. And I finally, like, with Cheryl Kaller, who's our director with Geoffrey Nauffts and I, it was great because she would sort of educate me and reference song, like, listen to this and listen to, another 100 people got off of the train or stuff like that. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I see. Oh, that's awesome. So I could dabble in that kind of approach. So I just started really, it's kicked my butt is basically what's happened. It's kicking my butt. And now I have to go back, and when I'm singing, learning older songs of mine for my kitchen concerts, I'm very judgy about, like, my formerly, urgently pretentious work of, like, well, wait a minute, but are you moving the plot along? Like, what, like the third verse, like, you're not, like, nothing, there's no new information here. Like, so, like, what's up with that, Jonatha? So,
Awesome.
Damn it.
Was there like a song for you? I mean, you and I have talked about it over time, but was there a song that was like kind of one of those, I don't know if an aha moment, but more of a like, oh yeah, I kind of get the how and why I as a singular artist belong at the center of this collaboration? Like, is there something that kind of what you really brought to the table that way?
Yeah, I think I brought a pop sensibility. I think that I have an ear for hooks, and I have an ear for melody. And one of the things that I always respond to is a beautiful melody. And I think that's as important as a hooky lyric. So if you are going to move the plot along, you better have a great melody to go with all those words too. Or, like, I might tune out.
Yeah, right. What was that song for you? Do you have something that you want to share with us tonight? A little
like
bit
a Geoffrey
about
song?
Yeah. From
Yeah,
Switched,
okay.
yeah.
I'll try. Oh, no, that's my Peter Pan song.
I was like, don't sing I'll Try. That's from Peter Pan. Oh.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear. Maybe you can set us up a little bit, just sort of letting us know, like, what's the context of where the song is?
I will try to do that. Actually, this song has moved. It's interesting. It's actually like my Peter Pan song in a way. So, not to give it all away, the story that Geoffrey and I are working on, it is called Switched. And it's about two women who are switched at birth, and they find out when they're 40. And they also find out that one of the moms kind of knew all along. And so it obviously throws them both for a loop because neither of them really suspected. And so I think that I wrote this song before we even fleshed out any of the characters or the plot line or anything. I just was like, this is what I would feel if I were those women. This is what I would sing if I were those women. And that was how I approached this particular song. And it's been like the anchor in a way of the piece. And we've tried to fire it. We've tried to kill the darling, because, like, oh, where does it go? Is it the, end of Act 1 number? Is it the 11 o'clock number? Is it the I Want song? Like, what the hell is it? And we've killed it, and we've brought it back, and we've killed it, and we've brought it back, and we've tried to rewrite verses and reapproach the chorus, and it just wants to be what it wants to be, because it's hooky, and it is what it is, and I think it's kind of essential to the piece, whether we like it or not. And what was super exciting, we did a reading last April, and we put it back into the ending of Act 1 slot. And we had double cast our women, our leads. So we had two 40-year-old protagonists and their 16-year-old selves. And then we had them all singing this particular song together. Like, I don't think I've ever been so excited in my life to hear, like, 4, like, killer Broadway stars wailing on a Jonatha Brooke pop song. And then like I added this coda where they, of course, because they always want everything like a third higher than I can even begin to sing it. So they want it like up in like F sharp Martian, key. And so they're wailing on it there. And then we modulate and they're going up and they're just like, it's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to sing you I'll sing you a verse and a chorus of the song. It's called Who Am I Supposed to Be Now? So I'll just do like the first girl's part. Can't be true. How could you? Do you still love me? Or has that changed too? Just tell me why you lied. Then tell me, who am I? And then tell me, who am I supposed to be now? What will the world make of me? How do I trust what I see? And how could you toy with fate? How could the truth wait? Maybe never was better than late. 'Cause who am I supposed to be now? Who am I supposed to be now? Now the secret's out.
Awesome.
Our other girl takes over. And then there's a bridge that they sing crazy together. And then the 16-year-olds show up and it's like
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And just a special nod to the amazing Geoffrey Nauffts, who's such a brilliant writer. And
so cool.
Excited to see this come into the world, this piece back in our world. I just want to remind folks at home, we're getting closer to when we're going to do some Q&A time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to either email them at questions@pwcenter.org, or you can go ahead and put them right there in the comments section in the live feed, and they will get filtered to Jonatha and I. So Jonatha, I want to move into one more kind of question song moment to talk about kind of your newest project, I think it's fair to say, with the super brilliant Jaclyn Backhaus, who is just taking on stages and really thinking about form and structure and thinking about dialogue and thinking about kinesthetics and physicality in such incredible ways. I'm just excited to see her work over the years and see what's to come.
Me too.
So you are working on a piece called Tempest with Jaclyn, and I'm so curious because I guess I've talked to you a lot about kind of where the secrets and the inner stories live within your music. One thing I heard you talk about even not that long ago is like, I love secrets, and I love secrets within a secret and the secrets within a story, and like that there's these things that partially my performance is unlocking and that the song is unlocking and that the lyric is unlocking. I'm curious if that's true for Tempest at all, and kind of like how that's going, because it's still very early days in that project.
Yeah, there are many things unlocking as Jaclyn and I brainstorm and are back and forth. And the pandemic is killing us because we had hoped to be in the same room, like, really barnstorming and woodshedding. And so it's like we've been Skyping pretty regularly since January, and it's getting kind of exciting. But anyway, the idea of secrets, and I think what's most fascinating to us right about now is the idea of like making time flexible and maybe traveling two different directions at once in our story. And I don't want to give it away, and also science and women in science is part of our quest, and permission and consent is also something that we're very interested in. musically, I'm obsessed with this classical piece that I have been listening to since I was 6 years old.
Mm.
And it's a Chopin piece. And I just have always thought like there is a place for elements of this piece in my world, in my future. And this is it. And I'm super stoked about that because I think that the melodic ideas that I'm drawing from and then adding to and adding counterpoints to are just making me super happy because it's a really simple element that I'm borrowing from Chopin, but I'm like, it's just like 1 and 1 and 1 is equaling 10 in my brain. And there's this sort of undercurrent of this thing that I think will be the support of the whole musical telling to me. It's like, this is the theme of this character that is our protagonist, is our hero. And so it enters her life when she's very young, kind of like me. But it's sort of becoming the heartbeat of her journey. And I just love that about music, that it's this subtle storytelling that you don't realize is there, but it is. It's telling you a whole story in its own way.
Does it feel like with each piece evolving, the more and more you're diving into theater, that either you're revealing yourself to the form and the form is sort of revealing itself to you? Does it feel like a sort of evolution as you go?
Yeah, I guess so. I think I'm just getting a little more, I was terrified at first, and I think I'm just getting a little more confident of at least, not being scared to say an idea. Like, well, what if time went both ways at once? And what if this theme just kept coming back, but we like totally reapproached it and like made it techno one time and like made it this way another time. And like, I think I'm just getting a little more fearless because like, who gives a shit, right?
Right. Well, you
It's
think
like,
about
you
something like
gotta try
Sunday in the
it.
Park, and if Sondheim hadn't thought about those acts in Sunday in the Park in such different kinds of ways and kind of what bridges over between them so beautifully, and thinking ourselves forward into the future and thinking about our past, while like, does that context give us like a very deep, resonant present tense, which I think so much of our country, our world is longing for right now, is how do we be present? It's really interesting to think about that.
Totally. And I one thing I love about Jaclyn is she's like super subversive in terms of like what her like I don't know if you saw her play Wives.
Yes.
So the middle section where it's like Hemingway's 3 former wives at his wake, at his his funeral, and they're hanging out doing shots in the funeral, and it's just so brilliant because they're absolutely in their own vernacular that has nothing to do with like what they may have sounded like at all. And I love that Jaclyn just like throws shit on its head and like throws voices on their heads, and that's exciting to me too about this our hero.
You're not going to play anything for us, are you? Because it's too early to share,
It's too
right?
early. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm sworn to secrecy.
You're sworn to secrecy. But stay tuned, folks, to theaters near you when there are theaters near you that are open, because this piece is sure to be out there in a world where we can gather again, in a world where. Let's go ahead, I think, and move to questions. And so the first question is coming to us, and we have folks. I forgot to mention, it's been ever increasing, but now I think this time there are something like 13 or 14 countries that people are joining us from all over the world. So Hi everyone, it's so great to have you with us today.
Hi, and thank you. Yes.
That's awesome, right? I mean, I think we keep saying there are these things about everything that is so hard about this moment, and it certainly is, but I'm certainly trying to stay learning. I think at the Playwrights Center, we think about that all the time, about what are we learning from this moment, and gosh, that we could reach folks in such a different kind of way outside of the confines of the building is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like, being on a world tour every week.
It's nice, right? And people are writing and responding to you about just like coming to see the concerts coming from right there in your kitchen.
Totally. And I might not have ever made it to the Philippines, but now the Philippines are tuning into my concerts, and France and the Netherlands and Australia. It's very cool.
Right. First question is, how has your approach to writing songs changed as you moved from writing for yourself to perform to writing for other performers?
I think that it hasn't so much, in a way. Like, I'm too bossy to really mold myself into someone else's vocabulary. It's funny. I think that just as a songwriter in general, I have learned how to not have to do every single thing every single moment, like in the story records where I had like 15 background parts and 20 million dissonant notes at every possible turn.
Right.
I have learned that less can really be more. But I don't think that I don't think I change necessarily writing for other people. I just write my little songs, and if they work, they work, and if they don't, like even with Katy Perry, it was like we had a great vibe, and I brought my little kalimba in, like kalimba from the Mom Show, like that is the 11 o'clock number.
Jesus.
So like,
God,
okay,
it is,
well, like,
isn't it?
I'm supposed to write a song with Katy Perry, so like I guess I'm gonna bring my kalimba, because maybe that will be something that's totally she's never heard before. And sure enough, the kalimba is like the bed of that song. It's called Choose Your Battles, but we just hit it off, and we wrote a song that I would have written for myself for sure, but she sings it way better.
Can you talk a little bit about, maybe let's talk about process for a second. So you're in your studio writing a song that you know is going to go on an album, or you think is going to go on an album, versus you're in a rehearsal room or in a workshop on a new musical, and you're getting feedback, from sort of director and other writers and creators, but also from the actors, from people who are actually singing it. What's the kind of feedback that you've received that's been most interesting or most helpful for you have you sort of reconceived parts of songs lyrically or even in the music?
Yes, and actors are amazing at giving you feedback. And I've been so lucky to just even a melodic thing from a couple of people of like, oh, what if it was oh shoot, I'm forgetting, like Heidi Blickenstaff. There was this one song that I wrote for because she was doing one of our characters in Switched, and she was just like, well, could I just do this one note here? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Oh my God, thank you. That's a great note. I will never forget it or let it go. Things like that. Or like, this story doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't know how to sing this because I can't figure out like this doesn't feel right. So it kicks your ass as a writer, and you're having to like come up with stuff really quickly, especially if you're doing these like 29-hour readings where every second is precious and counts, and you're doing rewrites every night, and then you're trying it again, and then you're like, oh, that didn't work. Shit, damn it. Like, so it's very, very humbling, very, very different, way less precious than, just being Jonatha up in my attic writing a Jonatha song that, it's just hard work and great work. And I do love the collaborative nature of it. It's humbling, but it is such a whole different world to be on that team and feel this team effort happening, and to get notes from like all the different disciplines that can make it better.
I have a question from Sophie, who's asking, she says, I've written some plays and I'm interested in writing a musical, but I don't know how to read or write music. I've written lyrics here and there, but do you have advice on how to start thinking about creating songs? And I think it'd be really interesting. You mentioned your training and background in all of that.
Hey, you don't worry about it. I don't read or write music. I had to learn how to write it. I had to learn how to write it into Sibelia so that I could make charts for people learning my songs. But I still can't read it back once I've made the chart, which is like so frustrating. You think that I would learn the language, but no, I know how to notate it now. I can figure out what to call, like, okay, that's C major 7. I know I can figure that out, but I can't read music still. It's still choreography. It's how it feels under my fingers. So you're going to be fine. I would say, I mean, do you play it? If you play an instrument, that would help. And then find somebody who's really has a great ear and can figure out what you're doing and write it down for you. And I've been lucky enough now to have a couple of amazing assistant musical directors who I can just be like, okay, can you like make that F thing happen here? And I need this note on the high part. And they'll be like, okay, got it. So at this point, I definitely rely on other people for that kind of stuff.
And it's interesting, right? Because actually this moment doesn't prevent us from being able to stay connected with people and say, hey, can we get together once a month and just share some music? I know Julia Brown, who works at the Playwrights Center, who was introducing and saying hello to everyone at the beginning, is in a band. And she talks about it all the time about like, oh, we were trying this new song last night and we were kind of working on it. And it wasn't until we got it in front of other people that we were really trying to figure it out. Yeah. And in the theater world, we talk about that as new play development or whatever that process is, but they're meant to be shared, these pieces of art. They're meant to be responded to. So trying it out is like really, really important.
Yeah. Scary but good.
Scary but good.
I know.
Tina
it used to be
asks,
super precious.
Oh, sorry.
No, yeah. That's okay.
Tina asks, is there a place we can watch My Mother Has Four Noses?
Oh God, I wish there was. I really wish there was. No, not so far. There is
maybe
not.
In the future. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, we just need a bunch of dough and an amazing audience that can be together in a room, because that makes all the difference. And that's all, just a ton of money and some people, and we could make a really great version of it, right, JC?
Yeah, like a couple of weeks, we're almost there. Yeah, totally.
I mean,
so if you want to start a GoFundMe on behalf of getting Four Noses, some version of live. But we did talk about it, actually, kind of this interesting thing, and who knows if it's the right thing, about what is this format, the intimacy of this format and the intimacy of that show offer you too. It's kind of interesting.
Right.
Doing an on-camera version, your first on-camera work in that kind of way.
So scary.
I know, right? Adrian has a question, and Adrian asks, what does a day or week look like for you, Jonatha Brooke? How do you carve the time or prioritize creativity? How does it weave in and out of the first world peopling life? How does it weave in and out of the first world peopling life asks us to do?
Wow. What does a week look like for me?
Yeah. How do you make time for it? How do you prioritize?
Yeah, I have not been very good at it in terms of just like carving out time to go sit and see what happens. And I am really, yes, I'm working on this thing with Jaclyn, and the Switch thing is a little bit back burner right now because Geoffrey's working on a TV show. But I'm not carving out enough of that kind of time. And I do find myself drawn 50 million directions by, prepping for the next Kitchen COVID concert and prepping for master classes, which I love. Don't get me wrong. I love this, that I can be teaching, because I usually teach in person. I do these 3-day workshops in Nashville, but this is an amazing, amazing other way to do it. But I do find myself kind of a little bit spinny sometimes and not very good at setting aside, okay, Friday's going to be like nothing else but just sitting and seeing what happens day. And I aspire to that, and I'm pledging before you all that I'm going to try harder.
It's so interesting as a generative artist, right? There are the days where you're like working on specific things, or I'm taking a thing that exists and doing a kind of edit on it or something like that I'm thinking about, versus just blank space days. And that those are very different kind of days to carve time for and energy for, the emotional energy.
Yeah, the comforting factor is that stuff gets through despite that. So I have this app on my phone called Spire, and I'm just amazed because I'm always going through looking for where was that version of that thing I wrote for Jaclyn, and then I'll find these things that somehow are in there that are Jonatha songs that I don't remember writing. So stuff sneaks through, and it's just sort of a habit to like, okay, just get it down in case you forget it. So it's just more of like, I need that Friday to like go through all of the voice memos to see, oh, there really might be another record in here somewhere. Huh. I guess I have been working, and I'm just I'm a brutal self-critic. So I'm always thinking that I'm not doing enough. So I'm sure there's stuff there.
You mentioned the COVID concerts. Would you just please tell us how we can find them Mondays at 2 p.m. Central? Remind us where to go.
Yes, I can do that. Mondays, 2 p.m. Central, I stream concerts from here. This is actually kind of half of my setup. And you can find them on my Facebook page or my YouTube channel. And apparently they say YouTube sounds better than Facebook. So there you have it. And maybe they're not quite as evil.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who can rightly say in this world, Jonatha Brooke? Who is more evil than next? I have a question coming in from Phyllis, one of my favorite names in the whole entire world. I love the name Phyllis. I'm a playwright, says Phyllis, working on a musical. How do you find collaborators and producers that fit your process and your work?
That's a great question. I have been lucky enough that I have gotten calls from people who want to work with me in terms of the creative part of it. And I've been lucky enough that those have all been really productive, awesome working relationships. So I haven't, that's how that's happened. But I think that if I were looking for a new project, I would just read and read and read. I would read plays until I couldn't read anymore. And I just would call whoever like spoke to me, whose ever work I really responded to or admired, and just see if I had any inkling of a chance to like, hey, could we, I have this idea, like, Jeremy, I've got this idea. What do you think about? Do you wanna?
Yes, I wanna. I think it's so interesting because knowing how many other musicians, professional musicians, and not quite yet professional musicians who are orbiting your world over the last number of years who have really watched you carve that path. There are people, as you talked about earlier, who like, okay, you've got these kind of deals and everything is packaged and handled for you and done on the front end. And then there's, I think, part of your true artisanship is as a producer, and has been the path you've carved for yourself about what you want your sound to be. I mean, I'm thinking about the Sweetwater Sessions, this latest album too, and even with Imposter just before it, about just watching and listening to you think about the notes on those songs, and the detail of specificity is like a great, not just a great creator, but a great director and a great designer and a great producer all at the same time. It's really interesting. One of our next.
I dream about going back to school and actually studying arranging, because it's so exciting to me. Just arranging vocals is like, sends me over the moon. And then just writing cello parts for Rebecca, who happens to be my cellist for Four Noses, and she happens to live a couple blocks away. Like, I love writing cello parts. So that would be my next life. I would go to arranging school, and I would become an arranger.
And just make things for Rebecca. I think that would be my next life too.
Cello and vocals.
She's so incredible. You mentioned your last album, and I'm just gonna include like both Imposter and Sweetwater Sessions, maybe to think about this question, which is, have you noticed any influence coming from your theater work onto either of these albums, either maybe in process or in how it's come out?
Yes, specifically on Imposter.
Yeah,
I do feel like those songs, the songwriting in those songs was so influenced by my theater stuff there's just a specificity and adventurousness and story to it all that feels different to me and was very exciting to explore. And then, of course, the arrangements made me so crazy happy. Adi Ashaya did these incredible arrangements. So, and then, of course, I was naked on the cover, so that was good too.
Yeah, you really were. We can't forget that part.
I mean, so
the whole thing, it felt like theater though. Even the album cover of that album.
It is theater.
It's like you buck naked with a big old bass drum.
Yeah, because I'm the imposter. I'm the emperor with no clothes. So yeah, it's very theatrical. And then actually the last song on the record is the last song I wrote with Joe Sample. And that song is from the musical that we were working on called Quadroon, and it's actually on his tombstone. It's one of the favorite songs that he ever wrote, he said. And so it's on he's got this beautiful black marble memorial thing in the shape of a piano. And that song, True to You, is carved on his memorial.
I know Joe's been such an important influence for you in thinking about all the different parts of your music. Have there been other artists that either theater artists or dance artists or musicians or composers, lyricists that have really, not that like, oh, I'm doing the thing that they do, but the way that they do something or how they do something has really sparked something for you?
Well, Joe, for sure, just as a composer, as a writer of melodies and keeper of grooves, is unparalleled. I think I was thinking about Pina Bausch as a choreographer, dancer.
Yeah.
And lyrics, I just don't even know. I think that I'm more influenced by writers than lyric writers. I'm more influenced by poetry, short stories, just any kind of great writing. And that's the other thing I haven't done enough of lately, because that's where I really regroup and refuel, is just reading great writers. So Sharon Olds, especially in the early days, just so many of those story songs were influenced by Sharon Olds' poetry. Alice Munro, short stories, Canadian short story writer. Elizabeth Strout. Yeah, just good writing.
I've been reading a book recently by an author, and her name is Jandy Nelson, and I feel like as a theater artist, I read her words and how she explores world and like how she places words on a page and rhythmically and all of that. And I think it's oftentimes for me where I think, oh my God, I want to make art the way that she sees the world.
Yeah.
And actually there's a kindred spirit, because in those moments, I think it's sort of part of another question that came earlier about like kind of confidence moments and moments when we doubt ourselves a little bit. What do you turn to? And I think about these moments where I'm like making work like, this is just too like this idea, like this has got to go. This is just clearly this is a bad idea. And yet I know something. It's like that song that you talked about with Switch. There's something in it that's like, no, this is haunting my art right now, and I need to pay heed to it. It is telling me something in a way. And I think Jandy's work she's such a beautiful, extraordinary writer, especially for young people.
It's so amazing that we can still be surprised. Like an amazing writer can still like just turn a phrase a whole new way, and we can just be like, wow, that is a different voice, and I admire that, and I will learn from it and borrow.
Yeah, for sure. This is a quick question. How do you approach writing a song that's an in-scene conversation between characters rather than a song that kind of functions more like a monologue or subtext?
Yeah, well, that's something I had to learn for Switched. And I guess I approach it by trying to write the words first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like what has to happen in this scene? Like where's the exchange? Where's the refrain that will make it singable and that can repeat? But what needs to happen, and the words will tell me what the melody needs to be. And I talk about this a lot in my master classes. Like the words tell you everything about melody, cadence, you know, whether it's a waltz, how fast it is, and they tell you where the money is, where I call them like the money word and the money note. And if you get your money word where your money note is, you are golden. Like it has to be, you know, there are stakes. So if you want to get that emotional stake higher, like put it at the edge of your range. Figure out the word that matters the most between those two people. Like put it at the edges of their range. If it's elevating, if you need to amplify the story or the emotion, like think about all of those things. And I think the words just tell you everything.
It is so interesting, that duality between multiple characters, or especially between two characters, versus that solo piece. Are there I don't know how much you listen to like music that is also other artists coming out now. Are there artists who have albums that have been coming out recently that kind of do that thing for you, that you're like, oh, see, that's really great. Actually, or they even do it on one song or in parts that you really like?
I have not listened. Again, I have not.
You've been working.
I have been working so hard, and I keep forgetting to listen to new things because, again, that's where I get refueled and re-inspired. I've been meaning to listen to Fiona Apple's new record because everyone's just goosing about it. I've been meaning to listen to Kathleen Edwards' new album, but I have not.
Yeah.
Doesn't Connor Oberst have something new out too? Like I'm so behind. I gotta get listening. I gotta get reading. And
Mary
I need a Friday off.
Chapin.
Oh, Chapin has
She's
one
got
too?
she's got one coming out. It's extraordinary. Okay, last question here. Kind of a logistical question. Do you actually play during the structuring of music in the development, so maybe in the development process, with the director, or do you use recorded music? And is maybe like, we'll expand that, is one more helpful to you then anyway?
Like actually play in the room with the people? Oh, I'm always there playing. Mostly because I write in all these weird tunings and it just doesn't sound right.
Yes,
not in the tunings, and no one else knows all the tunings. And so like literally this last workshop we did, my poor friend Ben Butler had to learn all of my Martian tunings because my head was going to explode if I had to be in the band and be the composer trying to figure out like what was working and what wasn't working. And that has been the case every single time until this last reading. And I was like, I will die if I have to do that again. So poor Ben, I had to like make videos of my hands. I had to like transcribe all the tunings for him and be like, okay, this is how this one goes. And he had to learn them that way, because for a trained musician, like nothing makes sense about what I do. It just doesn't. It's just you have to learn the choreography. It's hand shapes, and I call them clumps and claws. And Ben did it, and he nailed it. And I got to actually sit and watch the show and learn from the stuff. But often I'm wondering, like, how is this gonna? This is gonna get harder and harder because I can't just be playing in the room the whole time.
And when you can listen to it, though, then you can kind of sit back and have that moment like, oh, yeah, now I'm not just listening to how the performance of it is. I'm actually listening to whether this is the right progression or right rhythm or right arrangement.
What's hardest for me is to separate me, the singer, songwriter, from the songs, because I just want to sing along, basically. I love my job and I love singing my songs. So like if I have to go watch and be critical, I'm like I have a really hard time like forcing myself to be like no, is this doing the job it's supposed to do? Like it doesn't matter if you like the song. Is it are you moving the damn plot along, or is it serving a purpose, or do we have to kill this darling? And I'll be like, well, but it's so pretty.
They're so pretty.
So anyway, yeah, that's been really the hardest part for me, is to take my brain out of Jonatha, singer-songwriter, loving singing songs, to composer, critic. Like, is this working or not? How do I fix it? That's the hardest part.
The tragedy of Zoom is, of course, that you can see yourself all the time, which is like its own haunting psychodrama happening all the time.
Right.
And I had our assistant in New York would always say to me, "Oh my God, I just look over at you while she's singing in the middle of the show, because you're singing and you're counting light cues counts and you're moving and where's her body going and you're kind of wiggling in your chair." And I'm like, I don't think I do any of that. That doesn't seem like me. I'm not just any of it. And of course, I'm watching you on Zoom as you're singing the songs, and I'm realizing like, oh God, I do.
You're
I sing.
reliving
I
the
sing.
count.
Oh God, I've got to stop. It's just terrible. I'm just embarrassing to everyone. This has been such a treat, and thank you for taking the time tonight to spend with so many of our friends and your friends and all the amazing people to talk about your craft and your work. You
My
really,
pleasure.
I said it at the beginning, that I think in this moment, as we're all trying to find our path forward, and we are looking into and listening to artists to kind of help us figure that path out, part of that is the work itself, and part of that is what is the process and what can we learn. And you have just been someone who, from the tunings to the lyrics to producing to every piece of it, you have been on your singular path, and you have been such an inspiration for a number of generations of artists of all kinds. So many theater artists over the years who, yes, have not just said she should be writing for theater, but also like, I can't wait to use her song in my thing, or when I'm working on my notes, I'm listening to this thing that has always haunted me. And you really are a gift to theater. You really are, in the ways that I don't think you even know. And so it's a real treat that we get to have you hang out in the Playwrights Center world and our world. And I just want to thank everyone at home for joining us tonight. Please make sure to tune in for Jonatha's Kitchen Cupboard concerts on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. And please make sure, if you haven't gotten your copies of Imposter and Sweetwater Sessions, please do that as well. And you can check out some of the stuff we were talking about tonight, and look out at Stages Everywhere as they return for some of these projects. And finally, just to say, we will be announcing everything in the season of the Playwrights Center again in the coming weeks. And it's really, really exciting. We're so happy to support so many brilliant artists that I think whose stories and whose voices are the artists that will help us recreate the new vision of theater in this country. And I'm so excited to have you share in their amazing, amazing work. So much more to come. Jonatha Brooke, we love you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Jeremy. I love you.
Love you. Thanks, everybody. Please be safe, please be well, and vote. Wear a mask and vote. Wear a mask and vote.
Vote.
We'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much, and have a great night. Bye.